Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Jack Graham, and it's a cold, rainy day in the Pacific Northwest right now. Almost Thanksgiving. First of all, thank you all for being here, taking some time out of your day. We have a little special project we're going to do for you here the next at least 2 videos, maybe 3. It has to do with Pablo Records. But first of all, again, thank you for being here and tuning in on the channel. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button. It means a lot more than you know. And if you're not subscribed, please do, because we have a whole lot more down the road. Some ideas I have. Anyhow, so Pablo Records. It's an interesting voyage that Pablo's had. I made some notes. I normally don't like to read off in notes, but there's so many dates here that I don't want to get wrong. Pablo Records was an inception by Norman Granz. I think probably most of you know about Norman Granz. Norman Granz started Verve Records, started Clef Records. Was a very instrumental person in terms of jazz development. He ended up moving to Europe and continuing that voyage. A couple interesting little things about Pablo Records. First of all, the reason I'm doing this is because I think, as the title says, it's a very underrated label. And I think a lot of you may know about Pablo Records, but if you don't know about Pablo Records, man, there is a whole litany of great music there. The label started in about 1973, and the little insignia that's on the front thumbnail of this video was actually drawn in a painting by Pablo Picasso, and that's where Pablo gets his name from. Granz and Picasso befriended each other and hung out quite a bit in Europe. Granz collected a lot of Picasso paintings. I think they were auctioned off in Christie's at some point. But they were good friends, and that's where that little design came from. It came from a Picasso painting, and Pablo Records is named after Pablo Picasso. If you didn't know that, now you do. Let's see, Granz, my notes here, I'll just read the dates off. In 1946, he started Clef Records. In 1956, he started Verve Records. Ella Fitzgerald was really the first major name that was signed into Verve. I don't think it had a whole lot to do with it. It might have somewhat to do with it, but Ella Fitzgerald was married to the great bass player Ray Brown. And I think they divorced around 53. But they were married for about 5 years. And Ray and Oscar had a lot to do with getting Ella Fitzgerald away from Decca and into Verve. And that's really what kicked Verve off and really put them on the road to what we know of them today. Another little story, Sinatra almost signed with Verve. It was really close. Sinatra was looking for another label. And it was a close, it almost happened. They couldn't agree on some pricing. So Sinatra went on to start Roulette, and Norman Granz went on, of course, to start Verve. And that's the end of that story, but it's interesting. In 59, Norman Granz moved to Switzerland. In 1960, he sold Verve to MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, for about $2.5 million, if I remember right, which today would have been a ton of money. And again, of course, in 1973, on comes Pablo. 86, 87, Fantasy bought Pablo, and then of course Concord Records absorbed Fantasy. And of course, Verve is now part of the Universal Group and is being reissued. A lot of great reissues coming on a lot of the Verve records. So why Pablo Records? With few exceptions, and I probably own, I don't know, 40 or 50 of, I don't know, I'm guessing a total of probably 400 or 500 records that they've released over the years. I haven't heard a bad sounding Pablo record. They used a lot of RCA's studios in LA and some other studios around the United States and Europe. But boy, I'll tell you what, some of these Pablo recordings for the time were amazing, and if you get your hands on a good original, and they're around reasonable, most of them are reasonable. The sound is just unbelievable. You know, we listen to some of these recordings from the mid '70s and early '80s. I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be equal to a 45 RPM, 180 to 200 gram remastered reissue. But boy, I'll tell you what, a lot of them come damn close. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are just really good. But I've yet to hear a really bad sounding Pablo record. What Pablo did historically is they were not looking, or Norman Granz was not looking for new talent by any means. He was bringing along a lot of the older players, the Bassy crowd, some of the Duke Ellington crowd. Of course, the original people, I think, on Pablo, along with Oscar Peterson, was Joe Pass, and Oscar, and Bassy came along, and a lot of Bassy's sidemen made records with Bassy and on their own, which we're going to talk about in a little while. But Granz was not looking for new talent per se. He was looking for established talent. Ella Fitzgerald was in that group too. Sarah Vaughan went on to make some records for Pablo. But a lot of the Bassy alumni and it's just the great established names were recorded by Pablo at one time or another, I think. So we're going to go through a few of the records that I have that I really like. I can't obviously go through all of them, but just some of my favorites that I like on Pablo, and a lot of these are still available for reasonable prices. Let's just start. I mean, it's good a time as any to start. Let's pull off the one here on the top. Count Bassy Get Together. This is Pablo 23-10-9-24. This is a record with Freddie Green, of course, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, of course, Harry Edison, of course, Clark Terry. How about Harry Edison and Clark Terry on one record? Gus Johnson. Gus is a really, really interesting drummer. He stays out of the way and just plays great time. John Clayton, the young John Clayton, on bass. And Bud Johnson plays really great on here. The sound on this record is incredible. I think that I made a few notes on this when I listened to it the other night. And what I noticed on here initially was the great sounding kind of the balance between the rhythm section. Sometimes you get a lot of records that the drummer's really out front or the bass player's just a little too heavy, but this was engineered by a gentleman by the name of Val Valentine, who is just an amazing engineer, and just makes this whole thing sound great. And Clark Terry and Edison together, just, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. This goes back to 1979. I think it was issued in 1980 on the Pablo Record Label. Again, I don't know what I paid for this, but I'm going to tell you it wasn't over $20. Good quality sleeve and a really good sounding record. One of the better sounding Pablo records available. The second one I want to talk about is this Bassy Jam. This just came a couple weeks ago. This is a Japanese pressing of the Bassy Jam. This I bought from Face Records in Japan. If you don't know about Face Records, check them out. They have a lot of good quality product at reasonable prices. This is the different label, Pablo Japanese label, white, of course, with the insignia. And on this record, you know, we've got, let me pull my notes out here so I don't miss anything. You know, we've got, again, Clark Terry, the great Al Gray, trombone player, played with Bassy for years. Lockjaw, Joe Pass is on this. John Hurd on bass, and Benny Carter is on this. It's released in '77. The notes on this label are all in Japanese. There's no American notes on here. But, you know, this was recorded in RCA Studios in LA. So it's a really great recording. Don't know who the engineer was. I guess I could check on Discogs. But this is one of the best. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is about a 9.5. Great sounding record. The thing about Bassy and all his records, you know, Bassy's not Chick Corea, it's not Keith Jarrett, it's not Bill Evans. He just plays changes and stays out of the way. And, you know, that's so important. And I think Freddie Hubbard made a comment after one of his Pablo record recordings that he just loved working with Bassy because Bassy didn't get in the way, as he does on here. Great sounding record. This is engineered by, I think it's Gerald Hensley or Helsley, known in LA for really movie soundtracks. I think he did Star Wars, but a great engineer, so it's really done well. And of course, this was issued by Polydor. This is a reissue. Polydor, again, was part of the Pablo distributorship later in the years. But recorded in Montreux in 1975, a really great record. You know, one of the things, too, about this is Louis Bellson plays drums on here. Louis is known really as a big band drummer, but again, he just plays time and stays out of the way here. A very swinging record. I think, again, one of the top sounding Pablo records that you can find. Bassy Jam. Really, really well done record. Another Bassy well recorded record is The Gifted One. And this again has Bellson on drums. It's a quintet with Dizzy Gillespie. I think Mickey Roker's on this, and Ray Brown. So you get Ray Brown and Mickey Roker in the same band. It's amazing. And again, this was I think this came from Sweden, and of course it's got the European Pablo label on it. It's a European pressing. I believe it was pressed in Germany, but it was bought. I have the box over here. It came from Sweden about a week ago. This would be about an 8.5 to a 9 sounding record to me. Again, a super sounding recording. So a couple great tunes on this. There's a tune called Ow, O-W, a Dizzy original. It's not recorded that much, but a great tune. And I have to tell you that I have a lot of Dizzy Gillespie, and this is some of his best playing. recorded back in '77, I believe, in a studio in Las Vegas. Sheldon Marks was involved with this recording too. It's engineered again by Val Valentine. Anything that Valentine does is going to be top notch. So this is probably a 9 in terms of sound. I don't think it sounds quite as good as the last record, but it's awesome. Mickey Roker is such a good player. Where do you hear, if you can pick this up, listen to the cymbals on here. It sounds like they're right in the room. And the balance is just super. It's not heavily on one side. The soundstage on this recording is just unbelievable. This is 2310-833 Pablo, the gifted ones, Bassy. And finally, I think that's enough for today. We'll do one more. Another Bassy-oriented group, but this is called Two for the Road. And it's the great Frank Foster and the great Frank West. This is an original recording, very, very good quality vinyl. Seems a little heavier than the reissues. Pablo 2310-905. And Frank Foster and Frank West, two alumni from the sax section in the Bassy band. Frank West played a lot of flute in the Bassy band and plays some flute on here as well. But you know, Frank Foster plays both alto and tenor. West plays flute, and I think some soprano on here on a couple of cuts. What's interesting about this record, this is recorded in Pennsylvania, I believe. No, Connecticut, at the Don Elliott studio. Now, Don Elliott was a trumpet player who did a lot of work. It's another video to itself. But he had a recording studio and did some really good recording. This isn't quite as good. When you hear the other ones, this one's not going to be as good as the other ones, but it's still really good recording. I'd say this is about a 7. Really good quality. I'm picky. A really good quality record. Marvin Smitty Smith on drums, Kenny Barron on piano, Rufus Reed on bass. So a little bit later group, recorded back in 1983. So a little bit later group of musicians. Not Bassy rhythm section, but a real swinging band. They do some really interesting tunes on here. They do a couple original blues. Then they do a really up-tempo, straight-ahead jazz version of Send in the Clouds. So you've never heard it done like this, but it's really good. I think Frank West plays flute on that. Frank Foster, what a sound. He's got a very full sound. He wrote a lot of Bassy's tunes. He wrote Shiny Stockings, the Bassy standard. Really plays well in this. Worked with the Mel Lewis Thad Jones band in the 70s. So he's been around, Frank Foster. Really full sound, really great sound. I'm not nuts about the background rhythm section on this. Sometimes it's really hard to hear the drums. The drums are not as up front as the other records. It's a little heavy on the low end, but you know, it's not Val Valentine, and it's not the quality of studio that the other records were made. But musically, there's a lot going on here that's really great. Sound is way above average, but not super way above average like the other ones. But you know, these are a couple records that feature Bassy and his guys, and again, Pablo Records. We're going to do at least 2 more videos on Pablo, and we'll talk about some other really great recordings. But if you can find them and they're around and they're reasonable, pick them up. And we're going to talk, the next video is going to have to do with some Duke Ellington and some other things. And anyhow, a great label, Pablo Records. Please, 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 jazz fans, do yourself a favor. Again, thank you for coming by. Thank you for subscribing, whatever you do. And we look forward to seeing you in the next video in a few days. So for now, we'll see you.